Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Once again, this is Stuart Andrew Alexander. And I was reading a couple of articles the other day on the Wall Street Journal and from Berkeley University that career management, unlike the other phases, is a continuous process that occurs throughout one's career and not just at discrete times. They talk about how learning to set strategy and stick with it is a critical skill set for executives, and how successful career management is accomplished through regular habits of building relationships, engaging in career development conversations, updating your career development plan, and setting new goals as life and career needs change. So, if you are unemployed, underemployed, underskilled, looking to change careers, or simply in search of a better opportunity, then my guest today has some fascinating insights about having a God-centered approach to career development with a focus on real-life strategies for managing your career built upon a foundation of prayer, faith, and action. So, with that said, I'm really excited to have her on the show. So let's welcome her, author of the book, Marketing You, Be Strategic, Kimberly A. Ferguson. Kimberly, are you there? Welcome to the show.
I'm here, and thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome, Kimberly. It's great to have you along. So let's just jump in with the first question. Successful career management, let's talk about that. So successful career management is accomplished through regular habits of building relationships, engaging in career development conversations, updating your career development plan, and setting new goals as life and career needs change. Now, in your opinion, in your experience, is that a trend, Kimberly?
Absolutely. Career management is absolutely a continuous process. It's ongoing. We need to be evaluating and reevaluating on a very regular basis. In my book, I talk about self-assessment and really taking the time to assess myself, taking a look at where I am, where I'd like to be, and what lies in the gap. In doing that on a regular basis, what does that do for me? That allows me to identify my goals, to see where I am in my career. And if I'm not quite where I'd like to be, taking the time to figure out what's missing, what do I need in order to get to that place. So that speaks to a number of the points that you raised from that quote, one of which was learning to set strategy. Really very important for us as individuals, as we continue to grow and develop in our careers, looking at ways that we can set strategy to become even more valuable in the workplace. And in addition, looking for ways that we can continue to learn more, continue to grow, continue to develop.
Okay, Kimberly. So before we start talking about real life strategies for managing your career, what do people who are unemployed or underemployed, underskilled, looking to change their careers or simply looking for a better opportunity, what do they need to do to establish a plan?
There are a few things that they can do, one of which ties back to my very first answer, and that's self-assess. Really take the time. And when I talk about self-assessment, I'm talking about taking a look at our strengths, taking a look at those things that we do absolutely well, but also being honest enough with ourselves to take a look at our challenges. What are our weaknesses? What are the things about us, the things that we do that get in the way of our success? So not only taking a look at strengths, which are going toward the model of appreciative inquiry, where we focus on the strengths, what do we do well, and how can we continue to develop that? I'm all for that, but I also want people to be sure that they're aware of their challenges, their weaknesses. What are the things that may have gotten in the way of them being successful in the career either that they're currently in or the career that they're moving out of? So taking a look at that. The other thing that someone who's underemployed, unemployed, looking for a better opportunity, something else that they can do is define success. So as you know, in my book, I spend quite a bit of time talking about defining success. What does success look like for you? Because, of course, we have that general definition of success. Oh, I want to make a lot of money. I want to live in a big house on a hill with a white picket fence and 2.3333 kids. But what does success truly look like for you? Really take the time to break that apart and define it. In my book, what I call those are individual success factors. So I ask people to take a look at the factors of their success. What are the different pieces, and truly define it. The next piece is to identify our goals. So I've identified what success looks like. I've self-assessed, so I know where I stand in that definition. And then I start to put some goals in place, realistic goals, SMART goals. When we talk about SMART goals, and everyone knows the acronym SMART, we're talking about specific goals, measurable goals, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So being specific, being clear in what it is that we're trying to accomplish. The measure, how will I know when I've obtained that goal? Attainable, is it realistic for me? Is it something that I can attain with the education that I have, with the experience that I have, and so forth? Relevant, how does this goal relate to my overall definition of success? And of course, putting a time on it, because as you know, if we set a goal and we don't put a time on it, it's very easy for us to continue to push that goal off.
Oh yeah, we never ever get there, do we? It just keeps pushing it out no further. Absolutely. So, Kimberly, you feel it's important to have a God-centered approach. I mean, you wrote about this, having a God-centered approach to career development built upon a foundation of prayer, faith, and action. Now, that's not something that you hear on an everyday basis. So, can you just go a little bit deeper and explain what you mean by that?
Okay. And I want to make clear, and I oftentimes have to point this out. When I talk about a God-centered approach, I'm not talking about the idea that we ask God for this wonderful job and He just gives it to us. I'm not. It's not magic.
That would be really cool, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. But what I'm talking about is keeping God at the center of our career development strategy. Think about it. For many of us, we keep God at the center of all other areas of our life. But when it comes to career, it's almost as if we leave Him out of that piece, as opposed to ensuring that we're praying about our career development strategy, ensuring that we're reading Scripture. Because as you know, with the Bible, if you look at successful companies and the principles by which they operate, a number of those principles you can point to are biblical principles. So using those principles, using the principles in the Bible to help us in our career development strategy. So when I talk about a God-centered approach, I'm talking about, again, keeping God at the center, but also being practical. So doing all the other things that we need to do, because yes, it's wonderful to pray and to ask God for help, but He wants us to take action. He wants us to do something. So that's where that strategy comes in. That's where the planning and the goal setting and investing in myself. So if I find when I self-assess that I fall short in a certain area, I can't just pray and say, okay, well, I fall short in this area. God, please give me my master's in this area. No, I have to do the work. I have to take the action to make whatever it is happen. So there are a couple of pieces to that, but keeping God at the core, praying on it, seeking out His will for your life, and of course, again, using Scripture as a guideline to help us on that journey.
Mm-hmm. So you do your part and leave Him to do His work, right?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So again, in your book, Kimberly, Marketing You, Be Strategic, if you could explain in your own words, what does that actually mean? What does it mean to be strategic?
I always laugh at that question because be strategic, be strategic has become kind of that's my line. I'm always telling folks to be strategic, use strategy. You know, I have the show, Strategic Minds, and at the end of that, I say, and all you do, be strategic.
Do you use that when your husband has to take out the trash and doesn't want to take it out? And you say, honey,
yes, I'm like, be strategic.
Go ahead. Sorry for interrupting.
So I'm glad. I'm glad to have the opportunity to really explain what I mean by that. When I talk about being strategic, I'm talking about being deliberate, being intentional, planning, executing strategy, executing that plan. So when I speak of being strategic, it's all about having a plan and being deliberate in my execution of that plan. Now, you'll note in the book, strategic is also an acronym. It's an acronym for the 9 characteristics that I believe a successful career development strategy should encompass. And you already asked me about the G, which is God-centered, keeping God at the center. But every letter of strategic stands for one of those characteristics.
Could you share those with us? That would be fantastic.
Of course.
If you share those with us here, please. Go ahead.
Sure. So, and you'll notice some of the points that I've already hit are identified in this acronym. So the S is for self-assessment based. Again, our strategy focusing on our own assessment of self and our own gap analysis. T, targeted. So having a targeted approach. I've often worked with folks who are all over the place as far as their career development strategy. And some of that has to do with simple steps like not defining what success looks like, not having clear goals, cause them to not have a targeted approach. R is for resourceful, using the resources to which I have access. What am I talking about? I'm talking about people that I have access to, information, using tools that are at my fingertips. I mean, we have a world of information at our fingertips, and we can do our research and do our homework. We can be resourceful without much effort at all. You remember as children, or even early in our careers, if we wanted to research something, we had to run to the library. Now we can just hop on the computer, which is amazing. The A is for action driven, and actually I break the A apart. I have it as action driven, but also affirmative. I'm talking about those positive statements, those daily affirmations, taking the time to identify what's great about me and speaking that positivity into my life on a regular basis. So being positive and affirmative in my approach. The T is for tenacious. So to keep pushing, to keep going, in the face of those no's, in the face of those doors closing, those challenges, the obstacles that get in our way, we want to be tenacious. The E is for examined or explorative. So again, taking the time to explore my options, taking the time to examine and really focus on the different options that are available to me. G, of course, is God-centered. I is integrity focused or integrity guided. So, of course, the God-centered approach, I want us to be integrity guided. I want us to, the folks that I work with, I want them to be honest, meaning on their resume, being honest, not fudging or adding things that they haven't done, but really focusing on the honest approach. And then finally, the C, conviction powered by what I believe, powered by the things that I believe in. Very, very important. So those are what each of the 9 letters, that's what it stands for.
Well, that's amazing, Kimberly, because what I'm picking up from listening to that is it's almost like a roadmap, not just for your business and for your career, but also for your life. I mean, am I on the right track there?
Oh, absolutely. And even though this was written as a career development book, absolutely a roadmap for our lives. Because if you take strategic and you take it, I have entrepreneurs that have picked up this book and said, hey, I absolutely could use this, or I have used this approach now with my approach in my business, or just about any endeavor that we take on. If you use those 9 letters, from the S to the C, and truly follow those, absolutely it can be a guideline for our lives.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Kimberly. I'm sure the listeners are going to find that really valuable. Now, I know we've talked a little bit about some of the topics covered in your book, Marketing You, Be Strategic, but
Hmm.
can you just share with us what was it that led you to write this book, and what do you want somebody who picks up your book to come away with from reading it?
So what led me to write this? A couple of things. So number
Mm.
one, I am passionate about career development. I'm a career development facilitator. I went through a program through the National Career Development Association to achieve that. And it's just been a passion of mine. I'm a certified teacher and I taught career development for years for high school students. And then while I was doing that, I was also running a program for adults in the evening, doing professional development and really helping them with their career development and growth. So career development was a passion. What led me to write the book was my own experiences and the observation of people that I've worked with, people that I've provided professional development, whether it was training classes or one-on-one, seeing their experiences based on the different concepts that are in this book, concepts that I used in those sessions, seeing their experiences from that and seeing where it took them in their lives. Looking at my own experiences, my own story, I left corporate. I was working at Dow Jones for 9 years and wanted to teach, wanted to be in some area of teaching. And I'm glad I finally figured out exactly what that looked like for me. But I left a corporate job, doing very well there, management role, and I left that to go teach. So as you can imagine, that was a pay cut for me, a big change in my career. And one other piece of that is I wanted to teach at-risk youth. And that was a
Mm.
leap of faith. And the principles that I put together that are in this book are principles that helped guide me in that. Not only was I able to do that and find another path right in that role, I was able to grow and develop in that role. I was able to do all the things that I had been desiring. And it was a matter of me praying, me reading scripture, me trusting, but also having faith and taking the leap and taking action. So it was those types of experiences. And then a little bit later in my life, when I left to focus on my business, that was another leap of faith. But again, it was a God-centered approach to developing and growing. So my own experiences led me here, coupled with my passion for career development, and then the experiences of my clients led me to want to share the idea. And as you know, the book it's not a long book. What I
Mm.
try to do is make it very conversational. A number of people have said as they read it, they feel like they're talking to me because I share stories. I had I had one woman call me and say, "Am I Gabby in your book?" And I said, "I changed the name. I changed the names to protect the innocent and the
Yeah,
guilty."
sure.
But I shared real life examples of folks that
Right.
I've worked with because I just felt like their testimony and their stories were so important and really helped to drive home a number of the points that are outlined in the book.
Okay, and if somebody picks your book up, then Kimberly, what would you want them to come away with? What's the message? What's the lesson that you want them to learn from having your book?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
There are
so
a couple
many,
of
right?
lessons. Right. There are a number of things that I would want them to walk away with, but I guess
Mm.
the main focus would be number one, keeping God at the center. Absolutely
Right.
keeping God at the center, but also understanding that there is action that needs to be taken. There's strategy that needs to be executed. We have to be practical. We have to be deliberate. We have to be intentional. We have to plan, but not only plan, because I've come across a number of people that have wonderful plans in place, but they never execute. They never take the action. The other thing I want people to walk away with is not being afraid to honestly self-assess. And not being afraid to shamelessly self-promote. So understanding that a person, let's say Gabby, is good at a number of things. Not being afraid to say that, not being afraid to identify those things, but also being realistic with that and saying, okay, these are the challenges that I faced in the workplace, the last 3 jobs that I was in. Why is that? The common denominator there is me. So figuring out what it is that I'm doing or that person is doing in that role that's causing them not to be successful. So what I would want people to walk away with is the ability and the knowledge to self-assess, but also, again, keeping that faith at the center, not being afraid to take the leap, risk failure. And when I talk about risking failure, and that's actually part of a bonus section that I've recently added to the book, risking failure, what am I talking about there? I'm talking about taking calculated risks. I'm not saying gamble with your career. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying being very deliberate. And in order to move forward, sometimes we have to take a leap. Sometimes we have to take a risk. But make sure it's calculated. Make sure you have weighed and calculated the cost of that risk. Are the benefits or the outcomes worth the risk that you're taking? And that's really very important.
Kimberly, every time I sit down and talk with you, it's like we could just sit and talk here for hours, and when it's time to go, we're just really getting into the full swing of things. So with that said then, Kimberly, unfortunately, we do have to go. How can somebody find out more about Kimberly? Don't forget the A, Kimberly A. Ferguson, right? Don't forget the A.
Don't forget the A.
No, we don't want to forget the A. And, how can they find out more about you and get a copy of your book, Marketing You, Be Strategic?
There are a number of ways to find me. First, KFerg Speaks. So that's KFERG Speaks.com. If they go there, they can find out more information about what I do, and also find out information about the book. The book is available on Amazon.com. It's also available on BarnesandNoble.com, as well as a number of other online resources. But again, you can find it right there on my website. Another way folks can find me is through strategicminds.tv, which is a show that I host. So that's another way that folks can find me. And of course, if someone wanted to reach out to me via email, they could certainly reach me at info, that's INFO, at KFerg, KFERG.com.
And also, ladies and gentlemen, if you type into Google smartest woman in the whole wide world, then you'll find somebody else.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
You're working on it. Okay, work in progress. Okay.
One thing I forgot to mention,
sure,
I just want to throw out social media. So you can follow me. I'm KFerg Speaks, so KFERG Speaks, on just about every social media platform. So if you search for me on LinkedIn as KFerg Speaks, if you search for me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you'll find me.
Excellent. So, Kimberly, thank you so much for being on the show. And it's always great talking to you. And if you are listening out there right now and you're one of these people who are currently unemployed or maybe underemployed, underskilled, looking to change careers, or you're simply in search of a better opportunity, then you need to check out Kimberly's book, Marketing You, Be Strategic. It's available on Amazon, and we'll also have a link to the book in the show notes. So, with that said, Kimberly, would you like to close out the show for me?
Sure. In all you do, be strategic.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. Take care. Goodbye, folks, and we'll talk again real soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.